of Scotland that sees some of the sunniest skies. Underneath that cloud, it's not necessarily going to feel as particularly pleasant as late, but it's more into Thursday night where we've got a watch point for some particularly strong winds that will start moving across northern areas of the UK. These could provide 70-mile-an-hour gusts at times, so do just keep up to date with the forecast as we head towards then. Bye-bye.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh yes, already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hey, welcome along everyone. Patrick Christie's here once again, and I assure you that there is nothing I'd rather be doing on Valentine's Day evening than provide you, the people, with an action-packed 8 p.m. show, even if my long-suffering fiancé doesn't see it that way. But anyway, let's have it, shall we? As it emerges that the NHS sent a recruitment team to India amidst staffing shortages, we want to ask if immigration is the solution to a failing and flailing workforce. We've had this debate before and it culminated in the Brexit referendum, didn't it? But it hasn't stopped record highs of net immigration. We will be having a scrap on that next. And ask the most pertinent question as well is the uncomfortable truth that a lot of young people in this country are too lazy to get off the backside and do a hard day's graft. And foreign aid is back in the news. Apparently Britain, you know, the struggling post-colonial island with a healthcare waiting list larger than 3 of its 4 constituent nations, gave China, the world's superpower, 50 million quid in aid in 2021. Edwina Currie will be joining that for a little bicker. And Have you picked the wrong career? I know the feeling. Are you struggling on an average salary as inflation continues to relentlessly rob your wallet? Well, genuinely now, why not try becoming a diversity officer? A role has just cropped up, offering over 200 grand. It hasn't been filled yet. What was the point of going to university and trying to become a doctor or something? You should have gone and studied diversity, shouldn't you? Plus, as I mentioned a little earlier on, it is Valentine's Day today. And we've got a mystery guest coming up at the end of the show, a secret admirer, surely. I mean, this could be anyone. My team have kept me in the dark on exactly what is happening, so I will be as surprised as you will be. And don't forget, perhaps most importantly, send your pummels my way. It's a special Valentine's Day pummeling. Yep, you heard. I want to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Ask me anything and I will answer it. All of that is coming your way. But now it's your latest headlines with the wonderful Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening to you. A British person has died in Ukraine. The government has confirmed the family has been informed tonight and is in contact with the local authorities on the ground. And that comes as Downing Street today announced a national 1-minute silence to be held in the UK to mark the first anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February last year. Meanwhile, NATO today has been discussing support for Ukraine, including the possibility of sending fighter jets after yesterday warning it's seen a fresh Russian offensive in the country. The Secretary-General, Jens Stoltenberg, says the alliance will do all it can to help Ukraine.
We need to ensure that Ukraine gets the weapons it needs to be able to retake territory, liberate the lands and win this war and prevail as a sovereign independent nation.
Well, here, 2 serving police officers will face misconduct cases over the way they handled reports of indecent exposure by Sarah Everard's killer. Former Met police officer Wayne Couzens is behind bars, serving a whole life term for murdering Sarah Everard and has admitted 3 counts of indecent exposure, one of which he committed just 4 days before her death. The Independent Office for Police Conduct says the new cases involve a Met police constable and a Kent police sergeant. The government's to launch an inquiry into the sinking of a migrant boat in the English Channel last year, in which 4 people died. 39 others were saved following a major rescue operation off the Kent coast in the early hours of the morning on the 14th of December. The Marine Accident Branch says the investigation will focus on the emergency response of the UK team. Turning our attentions to Turkey. Lastly, and more than 41,000 people are now known to have died following earthquakes in southern Turkey and northern Syria. UK charities and organisations that send emergency supplies worth more than £350,000 to Turkey 8 days after the disaster. And Syria's president has told the UN he'll open 2 more border crossings so emergency aid can enter from neighbouring Turkey. And here, His Majesty the Queen has been meeting volunteers from the UK's Turkish community. They've been sending aid back to their country and to Syria in the wake of last week's earthquakes. King Charles visited a West London charity to see the efforts of residents working to help those left homeless following the disaster. He told them how deeply sorry he was, and he visited a pop-up in Trafalgar Square named Syria's House for Syrians to come to and pay respects to lost relatives. That's it from me. I'm back in an hour. Now back to Patrick.
Action-packed show tonight, ladies and gents. We're going to be having wild debates and taking innovative angles on stories that you will have seen throughout the course of the day. So to start us, the Office for National Statistics published their labour market stats this morning, and they affirmed, frankly, what we already knew, that Britain's labour market is in crisis, and there are currently well over 1 million vacancies in Britain, but 5.2 million working-age people are on some kind of out-of-work benefit. Massive questions here. Look, some of them, of course, will be just the right side of retirement age. Some of them don't fancy working because they've already made their money. Some of them will be ill. But some of them, unquestionably, will be lazy. And the question remains, is the solution now more immigration or getting people off their backsides and into work? Well, it seems the NHS seems to think that immigration is the answer. It was revealed this week that the recruitment team are to be sent out to India in search of staff. But is this really sustainable? The electorate consistently vote against mass immigration, about 5 million people on out-of-work benefits. Surely the solution lies in investing in our own. And, of course, the other question is, where are people going to want to live? I will, by the way, just say, though, that if people over here can't be bothered to go out and do the jobs, then, frankly, we'll take all comers, won't we? I'm joined now by journalist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and the commentator Narinder Kaur. Both of you, thank you very much. Let's get off to a bit of a firecracker here. Narinder, is immigration the answer to our, I suppose, out-of-work, unemployment, laziness crisis?
Well, this country needs immigration. The NHS is on its knees. All kinds of industries are on their knees. And we've always needed immigration. My father was invited over to this country back in the 60s because, quite frankly, no one else would work in the steel foundries and he would do double shifts. And I'd say that the funny thing is, and I'll try not to laugh about it, Patrick, is that let's stifle migration. Let's stop immigration. You know, Brexit had a severe impact on the NHS. Nurses and doctors, we got them from the European Union, but now we've stopped that. We had no alternative but to go to India. So what makes me laugh is you stopped immigration there, but you brought it in from somewhere else. Where's the logic?
OK, Patrick, I'll throw it your way. Just respond to that from Narinder then.
Well, I'm afraid Narinder is quite wrong about the idea that NHS workers from the EU went home or were expelled. I was looking a few minutes ago at a report from the House of Commons Library, which is a very well-respected source of political research on the makeup of NHS staff. And they say it's overwhelmingly likely there are actually more EU staff in the NHS than there were as of June 2016. So there's been no great exodus. Now, of course, we can go and plunder developing countries for their medical professionals that will be a short-term stopgap. But I think you used a key word, which was sustainability, and it's not sustainable. All we're doing is stoking up the population crisis, house price crisis. More people, by the way, in their mid-50s feel they've got enough housing equity to dob out of the labour market earlier, and then you just get another round of the crisis.
All right, Narinder, I'll ask you this question now, which is, where do all these people live? We've got a housing crisis. We bring them over here. We promise them a land of milk and honey. Well, there's nowhere for them to even rest their head.
Well, newcomers do, contribute to net profits to this country. They contribute to the economy. We need migration. We've always needed immigrants. They help the economy. And I just find it really quite funny that Suella Braverman uses language like invasion and will spend $1 billion on keeping able-bodied Albanians and Syrians in hotels instead of letting them work. Let's not let them work. Let's keep them in a hotel and spend £1 billion when actually we've got 1 million jobs to fill. But
OK.
let's not use
well, no, that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point. Patrick, should we let young Albanian men who just crossed the channel work in our NHS?
No, absolutely not. I'll tell you one group that cheats particularly. That is the people who come here legally and join the queue and make their due applications to come and work. You cannot let illegal migrants have the privilege of full access to the British labour market, or you're creating a massive pull factor, a massive incentive.
OK, one at a time. Narinder, let him finish and then I'll go back to you, don't worry. Patrick, go on, sorry, just repeat the end of that, please.
Yeah, if you allow illegal migrants access to the UK labour market, you're creating an enormous pull factor for an expansion at still further higher levels of illegal immigration. And that's not fair on the British people. And it's also not fair on legal, honest migrants who come through lawful channels.
Narinder, I suspect you might have hit on an angle to this that no one had thought of yet, and possibly with good reason, it must be said, which is, would you rather have people who just come across the channel, so people who had come here illegally but were here nonetheless, would you rather that our NHS bigwigs went to asylum seeker hotels and said, anyone fancy being a nurse, than go to India and do it?
Well, actually, yes, because we've got so many here, and we've got 1 million job vacancies here, but let's just keep them in hotels. And Patrick, it makes me really laugh that you said, access to our labour market. we've got 1 million jobs that need filling up. And we've got a lot of British people who, some of them are too damn lazy to do the work, actually. And foreigners are keen to work. They are hardworking. My dad did treble shifts. And guess what? The British people seem to have long COVID and a lot of illnesses and they don't want to work.
Well, hey, you know what? I actually don't disagree with some of what you've said there. I do disagree massively with the migrant hotel stuff. But yeah, Patrick, are British people too lazy?
No, well, I'm quite curious that Narinder is sounding like Dominic Raab and Priti Patel back in the day when they put out that right-wing pamphlet saying that the British worker was one of the laziest in the world. Though I don't think that's true. I think there's a segment of the British workforce which has been allowed to drift into inactivity and maybe has problems with motivation, poor mental health, irregular, inconsistent lifestyles. And if they're at the bottom of the labour market, you talk to agricultural employers and the like, and they do say they struggle at the wages they pay to attract consistent staff. So there is a sort of long tail in the British labour market at the bottom of people who haven't been given the skills, the aptitudes, the attitudes to succeed. That's true, but we must work harder on giving them that.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with you, Patrick, before I go back to Narinder, because, look, it's pretty obvious where I am politically with stuff, and I don't make any bones about that. But one area that I must say I do actually agree with Narinder on is I think if people are struggling for motivation, we all have bad days, we all struggle with motivation, you've got to get off your backside and go and make it happen, because the world is there for the taking. It is there for the taking if you really, really work hard enough. And yes, you've got to get a little bit lucky, Patrick, don't get me wrong. But yes, it is there for the taking. And if people from India are more inclined to come here and take it, all power to them. Patrick, your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I think the government's talking about levelling up as well, because it's truer in some parts of the country than in others that the opportunities are there for the taking. In some parts of the country are short of opportunities. But yeah, you make a good point. Are all school leavers leaving with the right attitude about making a success in the world of work? Do they feel they've got the right skills? Have they been brought up with a strong work ethic? Well, possibly not. I think we shouldn't exaggerate the percentage of British people who are in that boat. We may be talking about 5 to 10%, but over the whole workforce, that certainly adds up to a lot of people. And it's one of the nuts that we have to crack. And the other is people in their mid-50s, my sort of age, who are thinking, oh, well, my house is worth £750,000 now. I've got all this equity. I've got my pension. I'll take 25% tax-free. And I don't fancy going on the...
Oh, it amazes me, Patrick. It amazes me how many people show solidarity with the NHS and how many people who work in the NHS retire at 50 and decide they're not going to contribute back to it. But, Narinder, hear me out on this now. Is it actually racist to take the best and the brightest from various different countries? Is this almost like a version of economic white colonialism where we'll go, yeah, we'll have you, we'll have your neuroscientists, we'll have all your heart doctors, you come over here, and it's a brain drain, isn't it, from some countries?
Well, look, I'm a little bit dubious to say it's racist because then I get accused of using that card. However, it is a bit virtual signaling that actually we only want you, and we only want the best, when actually our own people won't even do the work. They won't work it. And what the funny thing is, the irony is, stop migration, but where do we get 1 million workers from? Let's just stick them in hotels and not let them work.
I think we've got to...
We need people. We need immigration. And our NHS has always been propped up by immigration.
It's an interesting discussion. It is obviously an interesting discussion. We could continue to have it, but I'm afraid we're out of time. Both of you, I must say I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you very much. That is former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and commentator Narinder Kaur. Coming up, have you made the wrong career choice? Because a British charity is hiring diversity, equality and inclusion directors with... you will not believe the amount of money that they're on. Sit down, get yourself a cup of tea. You'll need to be sitting down, because when I tell you how much money this lot are on, well, good grief, you'll pass out. I'll see you in 2.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I hope you're sitting comfortably, because in a matter of seconds, people, I'm going to be revealing to you exactly what kind of cheddar you can earn if you decide to go into the lucrative work of diversity officers. Also, I do have a very special mystery Valentine's Day related guest at the end of the show, which I'm quite concerned about because my production team aren't telling me about it. But before that, right, I asked you earlier, didn't I? Is immigration the solution to Britain's labour shortage? And I'm going to delve into the inbox quickly. Colin says, they'll come in handy when we're at war with Russia. Strong stuff, Colin. Can't imagine the snowflakes we have here are going to be much use. Well, hey, I think we'll take what we can get at this point, won't we? Kojak says, definitely not. We voted for less immigration in 2016 and in 2019, so we shouldn't invite foreign workers into our country under any circumstances. Hey, look, Kojak, I like strong borders as much as the next man, but we can't. We have to be at least a points-based immigration system, surely. Alan says, no. The way to solve labour shortages is to make the feckless and lazy get jobs instead of living off benefits. And you know what? I will actually say thank you, Alan, because I know that some people absolutely struggle with a variety of different things. There are plenty of people who are out of work because they can't work and would love to be in work and will resent the idea that bracketing everyone up as the unemployed is some kind of, like we're mugging them all off. No. But people, and I think especially the younger generation, are too busy looking at TikTok videos and people with fake, quotes-unquote, perfect lives, and they don't like the idea of doing a hard day's graft. That said, I essentially read an autocue for a living, and I am aware of that. Anonymous here. Of course it is. Plenty of excellent candidates throughout the world have come here and thrived, basically saying we should have more immigration to fill the labour shortages. Right, that's your views. OK, we've long mocked your post-colonial gender theory courses. But perhaps we've missed a trick. More and more diversity and inclusion officer job adverts with very tasty salaries have been popping up over the last few years. Up 70 to 80k at the NHS and civil service seemed to be going rate just a short while back. Yesterday, though, we found one that tops the lot. You ready? The Welcome Collection are looking for a Chief Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer and are planning to pay them £211,000 a year. I mean, good grief. That actually is £30,000 more than they are planning to pay their Chief Strategy Officer, which says a lot, I think. So perhaps, if you're not so concerned about the morality of all of this, tell your kids, sack off their dreams of becoming doctors. Pilots. What's a pilot these days? Engineers, they can do one. Or even politicians. I mean, you can just, if you want to be a solicitor, you are lacking ambition, because the salary that is more than the Prime Minister gets, after all, is, of course, that equality absolute tosh that we've got dribbled out to people there. So, how can this actually come to be, especially as these employees create little to no profitable value to companies who employ them? With us to get stuck right into this is William Clouston, leader of the Social Democratic Party. Thank you very much. Have you ever thought about becoming a diversity officer?
No, I haven't. But you've got to do something with all those humanities graduates, haven't you, as you say?
This is it. Is it actually worthwhile now, do you think, telling your kids to not try to become a lawyer or a doctor, just do something like diversity courses at some poly?
It's true that it's becoming a massive industry. Certainly hundreds of millions, eventually billions will be spent on this, and any organisation, whether it's public sector, private sector or voluntary, seems to need these new officers. And it's amazing, yeah. £211,000, more than the Prime Minister gets paid, about 5 or 6 times the average wage. And really, it's not. I mean, it's a charity, isn't it? It's up to them what they do with their money, and it's up to their board what they do with it. But the problem is, in the public sector, you've got this creeping in all over the place. So, I mean, it's not just we criticise the position, the posts, because they are actually quite divisive. A lot of these things, actually create more problems than they're worth. But they're also displacing the goals of the organisations that they work for. So, I'm old-fashioned, okay? So if you're in charge of the Welcome Collection, it might be that your purpose in life is to exhibit and curate the collection, not to transform society.
No, exactly this. Loads to talk about there, because if you are on that salary, or any salary, or your job title is in relation to diversity, presumably you have to justify that salary at some point. And that would mean, the only way I could look at it really is either making sure that your office looks like the United Nations, even if that's not a fair representation of wider society, and the collection, the art collection or whatever, is as international and diverse and LGBTQ plus whatever friendly as it possibly can be, instead of maybe, dare I say it, people getting jobs based on merit or artwork being showed on merit.
Well, that's true. No, yeah, I mean, artwork, we should not be censoring artwork, OK? And one of the effects of having an officer like this, by the way, the Welcome Collection are already doing this. They did this last year in a collection. So they actually employed people to write criticisms of their own collection. There's a lot of self-flagellation. I think, again, I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I think if you can't defend the very collection that it's your job to defend, you shouldn't be working there.
No.
It's basics.
But I also think as well, if people really need a diversity officer, what that implies to me is that without it, they would be frothing racists. We need this person here to make sure to just save us from ourselves. I don't understand why they need it. And as you've said as well, do you think they naturally would try to push a political message or a societal message onto things that don't need it? Well,
they tend to do that. They tend to look at everything through this sort of ultra-racialised lens. And don't forget, they're keen on certain types of diversity, but not others. I mean, they're not keen. Well, they're not keen on diversity of opinion, are they? There's only one type of opinion that they like, and certainly not. They tend not to be very interested in social class either. That's something which you just forget about. It's not.
Well, that is interesting, actually. Yes, because there is that side of diversity, which would be to try to really help the poor, disadvantaged, working class. Quite often Caucasian, not exclusively individual, who maybe is underperforming at school. But that's the wrong kind of diversity, isn't it?
The wrong kind, but also the tendency always is, I mean, they're flagellate, they're looking at their own collection and going through it and sorting it out. But again, that's wrong. We shouldn't be, it's the same as taking statues down. You won't learn about history if you destroy it.
Well, no, indeed. Now, some people would say that actually this is a sign of progress, that there were racist incidents in the past, there are racist incidents today, and that, hey, even if it costs you a whopping £211,000 a year, or even if it costs you, in the sake of the NHS, 60, 70, 80, whatever, but as long as you've got this person here, it is, if it helps just one person, that's worth it.
Well, OK, let's deal with that. Helping people, OK? The Wellcome Trust, its exhibits are mainly about medical history, right? So what they will be doing, and what they did last year, was pay someone to effectively criticise Jeremy Bentham, who's in their collection, OK? They're good at doing that. What I would like, but I think it's unfair because they're good at doing that, what I would like to hear more of is the contribution of Western medicine to global health. You hear very little about that. You don't look at the positives, you're not looking forward, you're trying to dredge up and flagellate and say this was terrible. Well, that was the past, we can learn from it, but let's hear a bit more positivity about malaria treatments or you know, the contribution of science and medicine globally.
Yeah, indeed. And there does appear to be this relentless desire to pigeonhole people. Can I just float an idea? I know I'm doing this live on air, I've just come up with this, but which is that you and I both try to apply for a catalogue of diversity officer roles.
And record.
And record the interview process and a variety. And just see, as we get increasingly more desperate, what we're willing to say about ourselves.
To be honest, actually, I don't think we'd make the shortlist. So
that's true.
They'd probably sort us out. But on a serious note, I want to get this across. Censorship of artworks is not a good idea. We've thought about that in the SDP, and we have a policy. And our policy in relation, this is, I mean, OK, Wellcome can do what they like, OK, that's right. But in the public realm and publicly funded realm, any organisation of any kind in the public realm that receives public money that starts censoring art exhibits will have all of its funding removed. That's the policy. That's what you need to do.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So just emphasise that for us then. So other policies are available, of course, but in terms of your one, so anyone who censors...
If you start selecting and censoring artefacts in your collection, it could be anywhere. It could be Gateshead Art Gallery, it could be something in Wolverhampton, anywhere at all. You start censoring them, you'll lose your funding. That's
you lose your funding.
We don't approve of it. You will not learn anything if you do this. You've got to address the past, learn from it. Don't start saying you can't look at this, let's get rid of the collections. As I say, I'm worried. I'm very concerned the people at the top of a collection that don't want to preserve the collection.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, actually? I think when it comes to trampling on other people who maybe are coming up, from a higher group of people who've said, right, OK, that's enough that now. We don't want to let anyone get close to us. So what we'll do is we'll trample that and we'll only promote another particular echelon of individual. I'm worried about where this ends. Because if we are now valuing, and it's going that way, if we value a diversity and inclusion officer at 4 times what we value a nurse, that to me is a concern.
That's a problem, but within this realm, what we're talking about is curation and what we get to learn about and so on. And I'm concerned about censorship, basically. I think where all this leads is their basic view, the woke progressives' view, is there's only one view which is acceptable.
And that bleeds down into the workplace. And you know, when they talk about, we just had a discussion then about getting people into work and what could we do to get the over 50s back into work. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole every single person over 50 here, but some of them would be absolutely terrified to walk into an office these days because they just pass a comment on someone very innocently, and before you know it, you're hauled before HR and you are sacked for some kind of hate crime. But anyway, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Interesting policy as well, actually. That is, of course, the wonderful William Clouston there, who's leader of the Social Democratic Party. Now, we've been to the Welcome collection, and a Welcome spokesperson said, "You're welcome." No. And he says, "This is a critical leadership role," not my best, which will improve equity, yes, diversity and inclusion across all of our work. The post holder will be a member of Welcome's executive leadership team. The salary, like all salaries at Welcome, is benchmarked to the marketplace for equivalent roles. And that, I think, is an interesting thing, isn't it? Because if they've tagged that on to the going rate for someone with that job, how many millionaire diversity officers are we dealing with here, people? It is shocking. Anyway, that is the collection there. We've contacted them for comment. Coming up, it's foreign aid time, people. Can we justify it at a time like this? While people have to choose between heating and eating, we've allegedly got nurses going to food banks. Should millions of pounds be sent to genocidal regimes overseas? I don't think so. For example, you may be surprised, or not, in the current climate, actually, to learn that we send rather a lot of money to, quite possibly, the actual Taliban. You will not want to miss this.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Welcome back. Now, in 2021, the cash-strapped UK government sent £50 million worth of our foreign aid budget to China. Yesterday, the UK's development minister said that sending taxpayer money to China was virtually impossible to defend, unlike China, which, of course, is very easy to defend as it spends just an unbelievable amount of its own money every single year on its national defence. China has the second biggest economy in the world and is thriving off a chunk of our foreign aid budget. Meantime, of course, some of our older generation, they battle against rising energy costs, shopping bills. That £50 million, OK, went to a country with a genocidal regime where Uyghur Muslims are into forced labour camps, sterilisation, organ harvesting, for goodness sake. That money, quite frankly, could be better spent supporting our own. And here to discuss this is former Conservative MP and Minister Edwina Currie and human rights lawyer David Haig. David, thank you very much. Why don't we just scrap foreign aid altogether?
I think certainly from a human rights perspective, I'll leave the rest for Edwina to talk about. From a human rights perspective, there is evidence that certainly in terms of developing human rights, that foreign aid can be of great use. But of course, it needs to be targeted. There needs to be evidence-based reasons why we give it to countries, and there needs to be results both in terms of human rights and other areas. And I think, you've mentioned China here, but the current criteria that put China on that list also put a number of other countries. And if you look at the top 20, it's literally a who's who of dictators, despots, some of them of which the worst abusers of human rights, including women's rights and LGBT rights. So I think there needs to be an overall review of who's on the list, how we put them on the list, and what we do with them once they're on the list.
OK, Edwina, every single day around this time, roughly speaking, 7,000 military veterans roll out the sleeping bag and curl up on the streets of Britain. But meanwhile, we've got 50 million large for China. We've got something like 186 million quid for Afghanistan, which is very much in the grips of the Taliban. So we could all imagine where that money goes to. Edwina, what's going on?
Well, I'm not sure I would totally agree with that figure you've just produced for military veterans with their sleeping bags. That sounds like a bit of an exaggeration to me. But what is going on is that for a very long time, we've given a lot of aid, and this is government aid. This isn't the money that is raised through charities that get sent to many countries. This is government aid, and most of it goes government to government or government to government agency, like some of the quieter United Nations agencies that do quite a lot of good work. In 2021, Patrick, we sent £11.4 billion, and that was down £3 billion on the year before because Rishi Sunak, then Chancellor, had cut it from 0.7% of GDP to 0.5%, which I think is a more realistic figure. Now, looking at what's actually being spent in China, Andrew Mitchell, the Secretary of State, to be fair, has been banging on about this for a very long time, even under David Cameron's time, when he was questioning why we were sending official aid to China or to India for that on the same argument, and that's why he's looking at more carefully now. Officially, it goes to Chinese students to get them to come to England, and I'm thinking, what? So that means we're probably helping China's students rather more than we're helping our own students, and it's going on British Council activities, which are there to promote things like trade. And I tell you what I think has actually been happening. The Foreign Office budget has been cut very substantially. Foreign Office and the overseas aid budgets were combined some time ago. The two offices are combined, and I think they've just been shifting stuff to where there's some money.
I'll cut in here, Edwina, because I want to come back to you. David, can we justify, really, any expenditure at the moment when we have got massive amounts of crisis at the minute? Just right now, should we pause it for a year?
I mean, I think you need to look at it on a case-by-case basis. I think, there are, well-placed investment and donations in terms of international development will reap reward for us in the future, but that's something for the government, the current policy, to look at. So I don't think it's something that we should pause, temporarily or permanently. We need to look at case-by-case basis, but I do think we need to see, both in terms of human rights developments, that obviously, when you look at the top 20 list, the majority of them criminalise LGBT activity. So is that something we should be supporting in that regard, or should we be expecting results back in terms of human rights, but also in terms of trade? Is it now not time for a review to look at what are we getting back in terms of trade and other diplomatic benefits? And I think that's something that needs to be an overall review. China shouldn't be on the list. India is on the list. You look at the likes of Jordan, etc.
Well, exactly. I completely understand the soft power element to it, and that's great. I want a lot of soft power. But at the same time, I do think if you're trying to send someone to the moon or Mars, or you have got whopping great big nuclear reactors, I'm not convinced that you necessarily need a huge amount of taxpayers' money in aid. Edwina, does it look a little bit at the minute in Britain like we've always got money for everyone else, but not our own?
Oh, yes, it looks like that. And especially when you're talking about government money. I remember going to a meeting in Bangladesh some years ago and being very impressed with the number of white limousines that we were being ferried around in that belonged to the Bangladeshi government and had been paid for almost certainly by our money. Meanwhile, we were going to see projects that were being paid for by private money, by charity money, that were looking after the very poorest. A lot of this is funding corruption. Let's make no bones about it. I'm quite sure your other guests and I would agree that as a wealthy country, we should be keeping up our end and doing our bit. I mean, for example, sending money to help with the earthquake in Turkey, which really needs a lot of support. But it can't be done without proper scrutiny. And I think the scrutiny is going to put an end to us giving money to China.
David, I'll throw it back your way on this one now, because a lot of people have been seeing what's been going on in the Channel, for example, and it's interesting that the hotel costs, and quite a large chunk of that is coming out of our foreign aid budget, which I think will please people. It's not all additional money found from somewhere. But when you look at the human rights situation, like Edwina was mentioning there in Turkey and Syria, the British public have raised something like 60 million quid for that, which is fantastic. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it. Should we maybe, as a country, just be left to our own devices? Is it the government's right to say this amount of your tax money is going towards foreign aid? Should just the ordinary British citizen be free to make charitable donations if they want and leave it at that?
Yeah, I think it's not so much a human rights point, but I think there should be a bit of both. I think, of course, it's open to everyone to donate to humanitarian crises when they come, and they will come up. They'll come up in China, etc. And there will be issues in China, as we saw recently, in terms of things like mining and where people have been captured or stuck, and that we need to help with our technology. But I think there should be an overseas development budget where we actually give money, but that needs to show a benefit for human rights and trade for England. And
on that, David, I will ask you about the human rights situation specifically in China now. What is it? What are we possibly helping with there with 50 million quid in that human rights cesspit?
I mean, in reality, £50 million might seem a lot to everyone watching, but in terms of an aid budget, it's very, very small. But this is a country that is one of the worst human rights abusers, if not the worst, on the planet in terms of what they do. And as Weena said, the amount of corruption in government and /UN programs of aid is staggering. And that's something, there's no accountability. There's no, in terms of results that we're seeing back in terms of human rights or trade and industry back. And that's something that needs an overall review. So I think the review, the consideration of the China issue is good, but it needs to go deeper and further.
OK, look, both of you, thank you very much. Absolute pleasure, as always. And both of you look like you have lovely houses. I've thought that every single time I've spoken to you, so now I just thought I'd say it to you both all at once. There we go. Former Conservative MP and Minister Edwina Currie and human rights lawyer David Hay as well. On whether or not we should scrap human rights altogether, foreign aid. I've not gone that far yet, people, don't worry. Coming up, I'll be looking at some of the pummels that you've been sending in. I've been asking you to pummel me. It's Valentine's Day, of course. And my team have set up a mystery guest as well. Yeah, so you can email me. There's still a bit of time for the pummelling, so gbviews@gbnews.uk. Ask me anything. I will endeavour to answer it. And yes, I am quite intrigued about this mystery Valentine's Day guest. I've got absolutely no idea what's happening, by the way. I am as much in the dark as you are. So if you want to find out who this supposed mystery, it better be good, mystery guest is, you're just going to have to stay tuned.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pearce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. Now it's time to get your pummelling in, isn't it? I've been asking people to ask me questions throughout the course of the show, and this is where we talk about them. So, Philip says, how do you get time to feed your hamster, Sheila, if you're always on air? Well, this is interesting. No, OK, for those of you who don't know, which appears to be everyone, because I keep getting emails in about this, I did decide one very bored afternoon that I needed a pet, and I decided that I couldn't get a dog because I'm always here. I didn't fancy a cat. I think they're moody and they don't love you. And so I decided I'd go for a hamster. I called it Sheila. Sheila can eat just once every few days, actually, so thank you very much, yes. Also, as I've said before, she is Syrian, so I'm doing my bit. Laura says, what is the most unexpected piece of advice, flipping heck, you have ever received? Oh, never start a campaign that you don't know you're already going to win. That was one of my old editors at a newspaper, local journalists. They are a pit of sage wisdom, actually, and that's good. So whenever you see a campaign that's been launched by a newspaper or a media outlet, they already know that they're going to win it. So they'll already have the MPs lined up. They'll already have the number of votes that they need or number of people to sign a petition, for example. They will always be planned ahead. So basically, don't just shoot into the dark and hope for the best. Sean says, what would be a perfect romantic break? City or an adventure? Well, you see, Sean, the thing for me is I don't drink these days, OK? So the idea for me of lying on a beach at some kind of all-inclusive resort would, I think, we'd probably be about 20 minutes before I was pounding on the bar. So I like to keep active, which is why I've just gone skiing. Also, can't ski, by the way, absolute disaster. Nearly knocked myself out. I nearly Schumachered myself at one point. It was terrible. But, yes, I would always like to keep busy. Jean is on now. How would you improve the state of Britain? Jean, I've got 10 minutes left here, OK? I've not got all week, Jean, all right? But I would, frankly, deliver on some of the promises that this country has already laid out for itself. I would take back controls properly of our laws, our borders and our money. And I would, seriously, start building Britain up instead of being apologetic for it. Apologetic for its past, apologetic for the people that we've got here now, apologetic for the future. The one thing that I think we need more of, genuinely, is ambition. And people go, oh, well, ambition doesn't pay the bills. Well, I'll tell you what, misery doesn't either. Anyway, James says, what's your favourite word? Kerfuffle. Anne says, are you wearing a toupee? No, Anne, this is my hair. But thank you very, very much for making me feel better about myself. Right, OK, I think that's enough about pummelling, isn't it? It was quite an eclectic mix of pummels. So, as I said, I wasn't really sure what my team had planned for this final segment here, but I should say that I made... Oh, here we go. I made the shameful decision to be here with you tonight rather than being with the missus on Valentine's Day. Now, look, hey, come on. We have lots of fun, really. We have lots of fun, don't we? And I feel like I owe it to the public. Shall we see who the mystery guest is, then? Shall we? I see what's happened. Right, OK. Emily, yes. Look, I am very sorry for being here. Instead, if it makes you feel better, I've got you a Valentine's Day present. It's a potted plant in a GB News broken mug. Is that all right?
I think keep that there. I'm all dressed up with nowhere to go. I'm sat here lonely. The washing up to do. Glass of rosé at least for one. So that is my Valentine's, talking to you via Zoom link.
Oh, no. OK, all right, I am very sorry. And as well, I didn't actually tell you, did I, that I was doing this show because I thought you'd be angry with me. Are you angry with me?
Disappointed.
Oh, that is just cutting, isn't it? That's just cutting. All right, well, I'll be home in about an hour and a half, and I think it looks as though I'm probably on washing up duty, doesn't it? So very sorry.
I think that's definitely the case, yes.
That is a frosty Valentine's Day. Emily, all right, well, look, all right, OK, well, look, thank you very much, Emily Carver, there, ladies and gentlemen, who is, of course, a GB News presenter, also a very, very angry fiancé this evening. Well, I hope you are all going to have a wonderful Valentine's Day evening and that none of you have forgotten. Look, if you have forgotten, what you could do is, of course, just the old card of, well, Valentine's Day is just a con, isn't it? It's a con by chocolate companies and card companies designed to sell you stuff, OK? Because that's how they really get you. Realistically, what that means is, and I'm sorry if your husband has just said this to you now, or your partner or whatever, or even it's a modern world, even your girlfriend or whatever, it's because they forgot, OK? It's because they forgot and they're trying to cover it all up and they don't want you to feel let down. I just can't believe, though, by the way, why are people so dead against Valentine's Day? Seriously, it's just an excuse to say that you love each other. And what is wrong with that? Anyway, I do obviously have a lot of making up to do. The GB News potted plant in a broken GB News mug is not going to cut it. But look, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone who has been getting in touch. And I enjoyed, of course, the pummeling that I got. It does sound as though I'm going to get a very negative one when I get home as well. But up next, we are going to be joined by Dan Wootton, the wonderful Dan Wootton. He is the man, the myth, the legend, and he is here. Dan, what have you got coming up?
So was that a genuine surprise just then, Patrick? Did you not know that was happening?
No, I didn't know it was happening. And to be honest with you, she seems miffed, doesn't she?
Well, yes, and, by the looks of the size of the bunch of flowers and the dressing room that I saw yesterday, she should be miffed. Come on, if you're not spending the night with her, it should have been 4 times the size.
I know, I know. I'm not good at this stuff, Dan. I'm not good at it. It's a wonder I've managed to actually get engaged, isn't it? Anyway, right, Dan, what's coming up?
Well, look, spend Valentine's night with me because we have an absolutely brilliant lineup. Nigel Farage, Tom Bauer, Stephen Glover. It is all going on tonight.
Oh, Dan Wootton, you legend. Right, OK, make sure you stay tuned for Dan Wootton. It never disappoints, and it won't tonight. What a way to spend your Valentine's Day evening. I'm going to go home and apologise in a bit.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. I'm Jonathan Vautry. After a fairly dry couple of weeks, some of us are going to see a bit more rainfall on the cards as we move into the second half of this week. The high pressure that has been with us is slowly drifting its way off towards continental Europe, and it's allowing this frontal feature to move its way in from the west. So whilst it will be dry initially for Northern Ireland and Scotland, we will see some heavier bursts of rain moving in, certainly during the second half of the night. Further to the east, we hold on to some fairly dry and clear conditions that will allow fog patches to form, and they could be particularly dense across some southeastern areas. A patchy frost also forming as well, down into low single figures for towns and cities. The increasing breeze, though, will help the fog clear off a bit quicker than Tuesday morning. Meanwhile, we'll watch this frontal system move its way in and provide, again, some heavier bursts for a time, but it will tend to fizzle its way out as it moves across England and Wales, so turning patchier and lighter throughout the day. We'll hold on to the milder air in the southeast, so highs of 15, 14 degrees, a relatively pleasant day here, but further to the west, it will just be that bit cooler, particularly where we've got the breeze around.